Hello, my name is John Reynolds. Welcome to Extraordinary Life Stories. On this episode, I'm talking with Danielle Nichols. Danielle shot to fame as the face of ITV's children's television channel, CITV. She's had a multifaceted career in TV and radio, and currently she's the co-host of Saturday Night Talkaway show on talktv. In 2012, Danielle and her husband, Dean Holden, suffered the traumatic sudden death of their beautiful 17-month-old daughter, Cici. Her candid sharing of the trauma and grief that she and Dean have been through and endured aims to provide comfort and hope to others facing similar struggles. I'm really looking forward to talking with Danielle, so let's get into it. Danielle, thank you for joining me.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. I'm a little bit nervous, but we'll be fine.
You've got nothing to be nervous about. Tell me, who is Danielle Nichols?
I've been thinking about this because I know that's how you start. I honestly am just a little girl from Salford who got shot to stardom overnight, it felt like. Got to work with her best friend, Stephen Mulhern, be on the TV, the dream job, and then had the crap kicked out of her by life, I think.
And yeah, you're looking beautiful right now, radiant, present. So fair play to you. Take me back to a young Danielle. What and who influenced your kind of career decision making?
We came from like nothing. And I've been asked this and I was like, I wonder why I did want it. And I traced it back to when I was a kid, I did a nativity. And for the first time ever, I was given a part, like not
a
just...
proper part, not a
yeah,
rock
not
or
just
a tree.
holding a tambourine or whatever, yeah. And they asked me to sing, it was just one verse of a carol song on my own. And my uncle had a camcorder when no one had camcorders, right? So because I'd been given this part, he offered to film it. Now that was before it was filmed. You turned up, you watched it, it was gone. But he said he would film it and allow people to have copies of it. So the whole school was like dead excited. Wait, it's going to be filmed on an actual camera. Because he was a bit nerdy, he was a techie guy. And of course he filmed it and I sang, "Oh me a shepherd." And of course I was all right, I wasn't great. I was no Celine Dion, but I could sing. And I remember just the audience silent and then like my mum crying in a happy way. And then the big fuss that came afterwards because everyone had it on video. And I can only pinpoint that was like the bug that bit me because I was quite a shy kid. I was very well behaved. I was the eldest kid. I was always the goody two-shoes. But this was a bit like, oh, this was a bit nice, feeling like the centre of attention. Then I went on to dance and I still dance now. I do yoga. I love to move my body. I think it's therapy-wise one of the best things you can do for your mental health anyway. So I've always been into that and went on to dancing and started to do really well in that field. And again, you know, it was Grandad, show us your medals. Have you won some medals? I'll buy your next pair of ballet shoes. And so again, that was it then. It just snowballed from there. I was like, I like this. So actually, I was quite a bright kid.
Yeah.
So my teachers wanted me to do well. They wanted me to go on to uni. Like a lot of my friends have gone on to, like one of my friends was a buyer for Topshop. Like she's now so ridiculously talented. But so I was quite bright. I was in the bright class, but I was like, no, I'm gonna be on telly. That's what I'm gonna do.
I like that. So you had the option to go academic, but
oh God, yeah, my teachers were furious.
Oh really?
Furious. My maths teacher dragged my mum in, and he said, she's not going on to college. I didn't even get A-levels or anything. She's not going on to college. And my mum went, no. He's like, but she's taking the top maths papers. And my mum was like, but she don't like it.
Do you know what I love though? You followed your passion.
Yeah.
So many people don't.
Well, my mum said, get your GCSEs and I'll let you go to dance college.
That's quite standard, right? But at least you weren't made to do A-levels or university, which a lot of parents could insist on because that's what they did and so on. And then you might have lost your passion.
Absolutely.
Or the moment might have gone and life gets serious. So yeah. I love that. And have you always been this kind of bubbly and it feels like you're kind of full of energy? Have you always had that as well? Because that feels like it needs to go hand in hand with what you do because you need a lot of confidence you won a competition of 1,000 people to become CITV front person. Have you always had that?
Yeah, I've always been too much. My mum used to say, you're too much. And people who knew me were too much. In fact, this is a weird thing. I don't think I've ever said this before. Someone said to me, what's it like being famous? And I said, it's the only time I feel normal. Because I always felt like I was too much. I dressed too different. I shouted too loud. I was way too excited for any situation. I had way too much energy. My dance teacher, always your voice I can hear, Dannielle Nichols, she'd say. So like, I was always too much. But when you're famous, you're allowed to be too much.
I get that. And you can be extreme. You can wear what you want and so on. I was in Global the other day and Jonathan Ross walked past and I recognised him because I looked at what he was wearing first and then looked up and saw him. It was nuts, but it was great and it suited him.
Yeah.
That's interesting because if you look at the fact that I'm with you now and you're just excited, you're excited to be here. This is a conversation that you're present in and want to be. That's just your way.
It is.
For someone to then almost put you down. So actually, you sort of found your niche. And did you enjoy the TV kind of career from the moment you got in? Because there was probably no prep for fame. In today's world, there'd be someone catching you to check you're okay and dealing with press and so on. You had to deal with all that on your own, right?
And I had a bad time of that at one point. So obviously, Stephen and I were living together. So me and Stephen were roomies. We did it all together. And we were catching the bus into Birmingham. And we'd been on TV about 4 months before we could not get on the bus. And it was Stephen said to me, it's all right, Dan, they'll have to get us a car now. We were like, yeah, they'll have to get us a car. Because we couldn't, the bus driver chucked us off at one point. He said, you're causing too much disruption, you'll have to get off the bus. Ask him, deadly serious. So they didn't.
When you two together,
we're crazy.
On TV, that's one thing, but in normal life, that must have been, I'd love to be a fly on the wall.
He was he still is my best friend. Oh. He's a legend. If you can get hold of him on the phone, if he'll actually reply back to you.
He does seem like the busiest guy ever, doesn't he? He's everywhere, in a good way. Yeah.
Mr. TV. So we did all that together, and then, like you say about the press, it was none of that. And it sounds ridiculous, but we were just so oblivious to it. But we were on telly 6 days a week. So like, I remember my sister saying, we were organising to go to the local shopping centre. And she said, I'm not going with you, it's ridiculous. And I was like, what? And she said, we can't even get round the shops. It's just stupid. Because it was literally like, photo.
What would be normal for some people, whatever normal is just walking along, that you'd be creating little adventures and little...
And especially if Stephen and I are together. And funnily enough, when we had lunch a few months back and we got it again, he said Dannielle and Steve, which is funny because he's so famous, isn't he? But it was still like, it's Dannielle. Because we were like, together, we were like, it was nuts. But the press I avoided, and Stephen's a very private person, so he never flirted with the press and still doesn't now. But we managed to avoid that until I decided to have a famous boyfriend, which, that was fun. And I feel like I was so naive and stupid and I didn't realise what the situation was. I genuinely did not know who he was when we met. And he said, I'm a footballer and I've got a push. I went, yeah, whatever, like chat up line, whatever. No, and he's like, do you not know who I am? I was like, honest to God, we were at some Westlife. Weirdly, Westlife were opening Radio City in Birmingham, so we were at like an opening thing. So I knew there was a good chance he was important. Anyway, I fell madly in love with him, head over heels, and he made a bit of a fool of me. Do you know what? I was naive, I was stupid, but then when you're coming out of work and this pap's there, and then the way you live, it's really frightening. And there was other pressures as well, which I won't talk about, but from his side. And a good friend of mine who worked at CITV, who's still my friend now, called Annette, really protected me and really looked after me.
So at least you had someone.
I had someone. She was really clever and she was very smart and she knew I was struggling because I just felt so stupid. I was like, everyone must think I'm this big home wrecker and I'm this... It was just awful. And so that was my first taste. And I understand why people don't flirt with the press in that way. And I've always shied away in the same way. So, you won't see me doing something for the papers. Do you know what I mean? If it gets in the papers, great. But there's that little bit of me that's like, oh, because if that turns bad, it's not very nice.
No, I get that. And I think that's having purpose and a passion for what you're doing behind it.
Yeah.
And I know, and it's so clear, you've got a passion and purpose and you belong on the TV, right? It's just you exude it, and that big personality. But it's a natural part of you. One of the things that I was always going to talk to you about is that sort of natural happiness, if you like, and energy. You've taken an absolute smashing in your life from a trauma point of view. And I know it's going to be hard to talk about, but at 17 months old, Cici, your little daughter, died so suddenly, unexpectedly, whilst on a holiday that should be an incredible memory and making great memories. Talk to me about that, and talk to me about the grief that you continually go through and how you still sit here now, being inspiring, being great company, being Dannielle. Tell me about that.
Well, I wasn't Dannielle for a very long time. I always say I was like a ghost in my own life, which I now realise is a side effect of PTSD.
Almost like a numbing.
Yeah. So I was numb to everything. Because on the day, I remember just feeling like I wasn't in my own body when it was all happening. I felt like I was out of my own body. It must be a protection mechanism or something.
You must remove yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. You just, like, this isn't really happening. This isn't really real. Numb is a better emotion than doing something stupid. So I understand why you get that emotion. But it's why I took so long out, because I never felt like, I knew I'd have to be able to talk about it. I couldn't. I knew I'd have to be able to be upbeat and be myself, to be able to be, because I am a bubbly, that is who I am. But for a long time, that Dannielle was dead. Like, and do you know what? I see, like, and I know my husband does the same thing, I feel sorry for that Dannielle when I look at me before that happened. I just feel like sorry for her. I think that poor girl, like what you're going to have to go through. You look at her, and so it becomes two different people, which is just, I know it's weird, but it is two different people. Like, she was this, as long as you're a good mom, as long as you work hard, as long as you look after your family, as long as you make good choices, everything will be okay. Not when you lose a kid. You realise, in fact, if anything, I remember just thinking, well, what, is there any point in making any decisions? Because whatever's going to happen to you is going to happen to you. So there's that feeling of thinking, I'll just back away from any decision because whatever's going to happen is going to happen. So for like a long time, I couldn't take the kids, like if they were poorly, I couldn't take them to A&E or any of that. So basically, we'd gone, it was a perfect storm, which it always is in these scenarios. We'd had a delayed flight. She'd been under the weather. We'd got on this delayed flight. It was Tenerife, well, Lanzarote, so it was miles away. So we'd had this massively long flight. She'd missed the naps, all the usual things. She was super, super sleepy. But I thought it was because we were traveling.
I get that.
So you don't think, oh, there's something really wrong. I was just like, well, clearly she's going to be knackered. We've been traveling all day. The flight's been delayed. It's been a bloody nightmare. So we get to resort and we're in a villa because we had like a cluster of children between us. So me and my husband are married to brothers and sisters, just to be weird. So my sister's married to Dean's brother. I know, we're just weird like that. That's how we do it in Salford. So we always holidayed together. She was running around the pool when we first arrived. And then she just kind of, I remember that she was watching Peppa Pig on the sofa and she started to fall asleep. And that's another thing. I remember she went to put her foot in the pool and it was cold, but she seemed to like shiver like as if it was freezing. And I thought, that's a bit weird. But again, you don't for any 1 minute think, anyway, we put her to bed. Another thing, the kids' bedroom, because we're in a villa, was over the other side of the living room. So the kids' bedroom's over here, we're over this side. She was kind of at that age where you don't need a baby monitor, but you obviously, I think we got up twice in the night. So, and another thing you do as a couple, I got up, saw to her, changed her nappy, and then she cried again, and I did that thing where you go, your turn, your turn, yeah. She's crying again.
Been there.
Yeah. So Dean got up to her that time and he come in and said, I've given her some medicine. I don't think she's doing so good, and you're asleep. It's just awful to think how the events snowballed. But by the time we got up with her at 8 in the morning, she was making a strange noise. So she was like going, and we knew she weren't right. And we grabbed a booklet from the villa that we're in, and it said, do not call an ambulance, because apparently there's 2 ambulances on the island. So they say, get in a taxi, because it takes too long. Get in a taxi, go to the clinic. They'll see you at the clinic. Now, in the taxi, she took a big drink of water. Look, to this day, my brother-in-law says he thought I was being dramatic. To this day. That's how ill she appeared. He said, I thought, is Danielle being dramatic? We got her at the clinic, and I stood in the line. I held her in my arms and I stood in the line. Like, what an idiot. Like, what an idiot. I stood in a line of people with my sick baby, like. And then Dean just said, swear word, sod this. And he goes to the front of the queue and he said, my kid isn't very well. Of course, the nurse came over and she went, and that's another thing, like, we didn't just have trauma, we had to experience trauma in another country. So then everyone's going, in Spanish. Yeah. And I'm thinking, oh my God. Because they took one look at her and then everyone started shouting and they dragged her in this room. And I'm glad I saw it, because if you hadn't seen it, I meet a lot of parents who've lost children because of the groups we go to and everything. And they're very angry because they say, this is their fault, this is their fault, this could have been, and I get it.
It's a blame
yeah,
thing.
A blame. You very much want someone to blame, but they tried their best to save a life. I saw things that you shouldn't really see as a parent. You would have been taken out of the room, but everybody was panicking. And they were doing this, they stabbed these huge needles into their bones. You think, what are they doing to my kid? Like, it looks like they're beating him up. Do you know what I mean? But I'm glad I saw it, because I saw them fight for her life.
You never doubt how much they tried to help, yeah.
So I know that they did their best. So but the trouble is that never leaves you, that picture never leaves you. I can tell you the whole day till she died, every second and every minute. But you asked me to tell you the next month, and I don't know what happened. I can't remember. Apparently I didn't eat anything for 2 weeks. I can't remember anything. I lived off tea with sugar in, apparently, and my mum was just like, oh my God, what are we going to do about her? But I don't remember any of that, but I'll tell you every detail. So obviously, they tried to save her life, and then they said, we're taking her in the ambulance. And I said, I'm coming with you, and they said, no, we're already, they broke the law and overloaded the back of the ambulance with too many staff. It was illegal what they did. They said, we're already breaking the law because there's too many of us in the back of this ambulance. But there's something about you're not allowed to die in an ambulance in Spain. It's a big problem. I now realise they were just keeping her alive, but I thought there was a chance. So they put her in the back of this ambulance, and by this point, I'm just shaking. And that's when I felt like I left my body then. So they put us in a taxi behind the ambulance, and the ambulance pulled over at a service station. And you know what I'm thinking? Are they getting petrol? Like, are they getting petrol with my kid in the back? They weren't. She was dying. So they were stopping to bring her back to life. So then, again, we set off again. And we beat the ambulance, because they stopped at this service station. We beat the ambulance to the hospital. And we got there, and this lady stood there. And you can always tell by how they're dressed at hospitals how important someone is, can't you? Because if they're not in the whites, they're probably really, really important, aren't they? And she said, I'll never forget it, and she just said, it's very grave. Strange word, innit? But it's because we're abroad. And she said, I have to tell you, it's very grave. I said, oh, okay. And she said, you'll need to come with me in this room. Now, as she did that, the ambulance pulled up and they wheeled her out. No one should ever see that.
No.
Because I knew she'd died. She was technically still alive, but I could see. I was like, oh, and then your world just falls to like, I looked at Dean and I could see that he didn't see what I saw. I know he didn't. I know he was like, they're still trying to save her life.
Still hope.
Yeah. So she took us in this room. And again, too short a time, 5 minutes, and she's back in the room. You're like, oh, God. And she just said, I'm really sorry. And Dean went, and it sounds daft, like when you leave it, Dean went, no! Like as in, don't you dare tell us that. Don't you dare tell us.
Didn't want to hear it.
Yeah. I just sunk to the ground, and then Dean started smashing the place up. And I remember being really embarrassed. And I'm thinking, stop it, we're in a foreign country. Do you, I mean, as if he'd have got in any trouble. But he started to like he threw a chair across, and then he like stormed over to this table, and he says he don't remember any of this, but he like banged on this table, and I'm just thinking, they're going to put us in jail. They're going to put us in jail. I don't know. I don't know why.
Maybe it's because at that moment you removed yourself.
I think so.
Just listening to you there, and then I'm, it's just so emotional listening to you. But part of you died at that moment, and you say you don't remember the next month. And Dean's reaction, you a coping mechanism isn't in place for that, right? We're not prepared for that. I'm a father myself, and just listening to you, your way of dealing with it was removing yourself from it and not even remembering half of what was going on. Dean's was to just probably a very male reaction, which is I can't control this, so I'm going to do something I can control. Yeah, I mean, just going from that to I'm not going to skip lots out, but just coming to right now, where you and Dean are such a solid couple. I'm talking to you now because of a message that Dean sent me that just put you two are such a unit. There's such a bond there, and it's quite a rare thing actually. And just the fact that you've come through this. What have you done? How have you coped? There's times that you can't remember. There's times that you weren't yourself at all, but you are now in the best possible way that you can be, and so is Dean. How have you done that, and what advice can you give to anyone that's clearly going to go through anything remotely close to what you've gone through?
Well, firstly, we're not perfect.
I love the fact that you've said that.
Yeah.
Because but who is, Dannielle?
I know.
Who is? But
we choose to be married. It's a choice. And I think you don't need the trauma to get good advice in that regard. It is a choice to be married. You have to choose it every day, because part of you wants to run away from it all, run away from everything associated with that pain. You blame each other.
I was just going to say, you mentioned blame, and I wondered whether that, in your instance perhaps not, but in some other people's instance, if there's any blame apportion, that must be so heightened. And then can you even stay together? But just.
So someone once said about blame. Oh no, we were at a support group, and this lady said, I just couldn't get over the fact, she's talking about her husband, he weren't there. We used to go to support groups together, but a lot of time it's just mums. I could never get over the fact that he would just never seemed to have hurt him the same. He didn't love her the same. She was talking about her own relationship with losing her own child. And it came round to me, and I just very calmly said, no, he didn't love her as much as I did. I'm not angry at him. I'll just tell you now, there's no way. I carried her in my body. I knew her 9 months longer than he did. Like, no way did he love her as much as I loved him. I'm not mad at him for that. No one loved her as much as I loved her. No one. So it doesn't need to be an argument about it. He always says, because he was the last to go into her, he's always very much, when we've done therapy or counselling, that it comes up with Dean. Because as a father, he says, you promise you'll always protect this child from the minute they're born.
Especially a daughter.
And he said, I didn't do that. I couldn't do that. And so what we've found is rather than a blame game, or rather than attacking each other or becoming each other's enemy, it's all right to mess up. You have to look at it like you would your own child. We all make mistakes. So we know we weren't to blame in that situation. Obviously, she died of meningitis. She had an underlying issue. Sepsis overtook her, and then there was no going back. And once sepsis gets in, that's it. And once she was, before we got to that clinic, that's what had set in that taxi ride. That's what happens. But it's okay to say, and this is where I come from, I messed up, and that's okay. And people say, you didn't, there was nothing you could have done. No, that's not helping me. That's not getting me anywhere. What I need to do is look at what I could have done differently, but know that when I did what I did, it was coming from the best place with the best intentions, and maybe I'm not perfect. And then what I had to do in therapy was forgive myself. And that's what I had to do. I had to, because I remember people, so I've done like support groups for breastfeeding. I do a lot of stuff with breastfeeding. I'm big into that. And I've done a lot of stuff with helping with postnatal depression and things like that. But I always think when people ask my advice, there's a little monster in me that goes, what do you know? Your kid died. There's a little monster that does that in the back of my head. And then just for a second, and then I think, no, I'm giving what I think is the best advice I can give. But that sits with you. I don't need anybody I don't think any parent needs anybody to give them an hard time. I think we give ourselves enough of a hard time.
Well, you just said it, the voice in your head.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't relate to what you're saying. I can just only empathise, and I know that I've got voices in my head that I'm like, really?
Yeah.
What are you?
Yeah.
But to have those voices in your head is something you, at least, and actually therapy, is that something you instantly went out and sought, or was it offered to you? Because clearly that's something you brought up a few times that's helped you.
Dean and I, a couple of days later, sat literally on a cliff edge in Lanzarote. And he always says now, you know I had hold of you, don't you? I said, I know you had hold of me. If we didn't have 2 children at home waiting for us, we would be sat having this conversation. To live with the pain and the physical pain of what you then have to wake up to every second that you go to sleep and you forget your awful life, and then for that split second you wake up and you forgot for just a second that you've got a dead child, and then you go, oh, there it is, there's my hand that I was dealt. And I think there was no question, we were broken. We were absolutely, the 2 of us, broken. But no one's gonna come and rescue you. And I think because we were both the eldest children, well, he's the second eldest, but eldest boy, but we were the older kids in the family. We'd always took the bull by the horns. We've always had to fight for ourselves. We've always had to, it's been do it yourself or it don't get done. And I think we both knew we're gonna have to fight for this. And as far as a marriage goes, I cannot sit here and preach and say that I haven't made mistakes and that Dean hasn't made mistakes. But ultimately, I couldn't imagine spending my life with someone who hadn't loved her and known her. And so that, as a woman, has always pulled me back. And it's hard, man. It's hard to be married. It's hard to be married for a long time. It's certainly hard to bring your kids up and then kind of find yourself again once they're independent and don't need you anymore. And it's also hard to not, we're terrible at making ourselves the victims. We put everyone first, and we love doing it. We put everyone first before ourselves. And then we suddenly go, what about me? And it's like, well, we did it. We caused this problem. And then we suddenly go, no one cares about me and it's all about everyone else. But we made it like that. You know what I mean? It's very difficult. I see young mums and it's just all about the kids. And you kind of just want to go to them, just keep a little bit back for you. But we don't. And they won't. And I didn't. We give it all to our kids, don't we?
But you've been through something that gives you perspective and maturity that, in the nicest way, makes you formidable, makes you resilient, you and Dean. But you also know that you've got that from something that, to use that term, no pressure, no diamonds, you have been stress tested.
Oh God, yeah.
I mean, it makes you one tough woman now. And what I love, and I want to talk about what you're doing now with Talk TV and the kind of revitalizing of your career, because you've gone in and you've probably, again, use that word, formidable now. You've got passion for what you do. You know what you're good at. You know what you want to do. And you seem to be loving it again, because you've come through a seriously tough period, and it's always going to be there. But even meeting you here today and so on, you're on it. When did you feel ready to do that, and what's the trajectory of where you want to go to?
A second trauma. So remember, I don't know if you remember when we first met, we were talking about Jack and how the trauma happens 10 years after. It's interesting you say that, literally 10 years to the day. It was the COVID lockdowns. So it was 10 years after she'd died. We're in the COVID lockdowns. Dean's this big celeb down in Bristol, can't walk down the street because he's suddenly the manager of Bristol, and I'm being asked, can you hold me bag and can you take a picture? Do you know what I mean? And then, of course, we go into COVID lockdown and it's awful. 4 kids. I've got teenagers who won't get out of bed in the morning and who won't go to bed at night and who won't get off the computer games and who are crying because they can't go and play football with the mates. I've got little Liz. I've got a 2-year-old who all he wants to do is distract his sister from doing any of her own work because she's my only girl and the only one who wants to do any schoolwork because it's fun. So she wants to do schoolwork. He's ripping her stuff off the table. He's fighting. And I'm not allowed to get my mum to help, my sisters to help, my sister to help, my brother to help. I'm not allowed. We've got to do it all on our own. And I didn't realise I was starting the menopause, which I now realise. I completely disassociated from my life. I literally didn't want to be a wife. I didn't want to be a mum. I felt like I didn't love my kids anymore. I felt like I didn't love my husband anymore. He came home. I hadn't told him any of this because I was kind of like thinking, it'll go away, it'll be okay, it'll go away. And I remember like looking at the drawer with the paracetamol in and just thinking, I don't know if I can, I don't want to carry on. This is not a life. This is awful. And all you were allowed to do was go for a walk. He walked in the door from Bristol, and again, they were stopping him from coming back because of the bubble thing and all that rubbish. And he went for a walk. He said, you go for a walk. So I went for a walk. And about 3 hours later, he's like, where are you? I said, I'm not coming home. He was like, what? Now remember, all we've been through, and it's always been about talking. I've always told him if I felt a certain way. But because he had his big break, I'd kept it all bottled up. So ordinarily, I'd say to him, I'm feeling like neglected. I'm feeling like I'm doing all the kids on my own. We work in the respect that we're both very vocal. Obviously, he thinks I'm a big emotional mess, but he'll listen to what I've got to say and accept some responsibility for it. He'll say like, well, there must be a reason you're feeling like that. What can I do to help? It's not about a blame game, is it? So, but I'd kept it all in because this was his big break. This was his first proper chance as a manager, and I didn't want all the pressure, so I kept it quiet. And this is the problem. This is what we can't do. We cannot not talk. Like we have to talk about it. It doesn't go away by not talking about it. I pushed it down. Went for this walk and just thought, maybe if I could like buy a tent. Because there were no hotels open or anything.
Just needed to escape.
I just needed, yeah. And so anyway, luckily Dean said, right, we've got a therapist on Zoom. He was like straight away into panic mode. He's like, are you all right? And I just kind of went, no. And he was like, right, okay. So tomorrow we're speaking to a therapist on Zoom and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, and the therapist said to me, the words you're using are what I hear from people who've been put in jail. I was like, right. And she's like, I'm really concerned about you. And I'm really concerned that being in a lockdown is not very good for you. And as your therapist, I would advise you not to follow the rules. Those were her words. She said, from a health perspective, because this is making you really sick. She said, I have women who've got 4 kids, that's a problem in itself. I have women who've lost a kid, that's a problem in itself. I have women whose husband works away from home, that's a problem in itself. She said, I have women who are trying to homeschool. She said, honest to God, no wonder you're not well. At least you know you're not well. Right, okay, she's like, what can we do? So obviously fortunately, money was able to pay us that. This is what makes me so angry, because we come from nothing. Like, you shouldn't need to have the money. You shouldn't need to be money. But yeah, I would buy a nice dress, so I'll pay for a therapist. Do you know what I mean? That's all we've always been about it. We'll find it. We've not always had money. We've had a lot. That's another thing. We've been through a lot of hardship, a lot of financial struggles. It's kind of like, there's not much you could say to me that we haven't had a go at. Do you know what I mean? I have been in Asda and I've had to leave the shopping on the belt and say, oh, I'll have to check my card in the machine outside, and then get in my car and drive home, because I've been like, we can't afford to buy the food.
But from a perspective point of view, if you've been there and you've had that experience, then knowing that you've both grafted to be able to actually afford what you needed at that time, no one's resenting you for that.
No.
You know, you don't need to justify that at all. And actually, you could have been spending, as you said, your money on other things. At least you had that to spend on the things that have got you through.
Well, that's what, and she just said, what do you want? And I'll be honest with you, right, at this point, Dean went to me, do you want a boob job? Do you want a facelift? What do you want? You can have anything.
I like the fact that he's a problem solver, right? Every time you've said you've had, you know, he is there, like, which actually explains his reaction when he couldn't solve something, which is so traumatic, and it must have been awful. But there is, I love the fact you said you both aren't perfect, but you've come in here today, and I love the fact that you've got through really tough times, and the resilience is taking you to a point where it feels like this stage of your life and your career, you know, you're ready to flourish.
Well, that's what she said, and Dean said, do you want a new car, do you want a house? You can have, because for one point in our life, we had not a lot of money, but we had a couple of quid where he could like say, what do you want? And I said, I want me back. And I know it's such a cliche. I remember my mum left my dad at the same age, mid-menopause, almost like textbook. It's embarrassing that us women are so predictable, but it's like you do suddenly think, like, who am I? Like, I couldn't, it sounds ridiculous, but she's like, what food do you like? And I said, well, whatever the kids are having. That's not an answer, is it?
But you lost yourself at that point.
Yeah.
You're a shell.
Gone.
So you're a ghost, you know. So
yeah. 10 years of just maintenance, and then a breakdown, basically, of going, actually, everything has fell to crap. So, and I look, and I asked myself, what do I want? And I thought, I want a bit of what I had of that Dannielle.
Yeah.
I want, and I didn't want a boob job. I know they're enormous. The kids did that. I didn't want that. I didn't want a facelift. I didn't want a new car. I just wanted some kind of work, my career. I wanted something for myself where I could be Dannielle, not wife of, mum of. And I know it's a cliche, and I don't care it's a cliche, because as women, we should be able to talk about it and say, actually, we've totally lost ourselves in family here, and we need to find ourselves again. And we should be able to do that and not feel like, oh, here she is, hot sweats, you know what I mean? Like, we should be able to go, actually, this is a big deal, this. And it is a hormone imbalance, and I realise that now, and I didn't know that. So obviously, once I got on the HRT and my hormones got balanced, I love my children again, because the happy hormone came back, and I thought, oh, I do quite like them, they're all right.
But you got yourself educated to find out what it was to then have the medication to actually, you know, which you could argue a lot of people are slow to do or don't do. And in terms of how you manage now with Dean, Saudi Arabia, so the logistics of that, you've got your career resurrected. How are you managing that? Because there's some juggling going on there, surely.
We don't do things by halves, do we? It's absolutely ridiculous. Do you know what as well? Like, look, it's all the reasons I find him attractive. I'm not going to lie. He's very decisive. He makes a decision. He's got a pair of balls. It's all very sexy to me. I want him to be like that. But like, literally, he's like, right, we've had this opportunity, and this is where I think this is what we're doing. And it's not like he did it without my permission. He would never do that. But it was like, my job here is to support this family, and this is the best way of doing it. And it's going to give us an opportunity to give to our children what we were not able to have from our parents. It's not just that. We've got a mortgage to pay and we've got bills to pay. You know, you've got to earn a living, and that is his job. It's not ideal, as in, I would love him to be a manager in this country. And I remember just going, can I just get a manager's job in this country? Like, I've always wanted to live down south. Anyway, but it is, I can see him grow and I trust in him, and he follows his gut and he follows his instinct.
He's following his passion as
he
well,
is.
right?
And
you're following your passion. But as long as you can both do that, because you were so...
human beings, John. And what happens, don't you find that in marriages, we become blurred into this shmish and we forget, like, I don't have to be married to Dean Holden. I sometimes, as women, we have to remind you men that we don't have to be there. You know what I mean? We don't have to be your wife.
It's a choice.
It is a choice, exactly. It's a choice that we make. But, and I think that in the same breath, he doesn't have to be married to me. I don't own him. He's doing, as far as I'm concerned, he's supporting our family. He's doing what he thinks is the best for our family. That's it. That's enough, innit?
And in his own way, he's supporting you. Obviously, logistically, there must be times when he physically can't, but he's always checking in on you, and you make it work.
That's what he's like, though.
No, I can tell. Yeah.
That's when he reached out to you. That's what he does.
Yeah.
If it's for his family, and that's why we call Cici dying now our superpower, because before then we were very people pleasers. We wanted to keep people happy. And we wanted to be the goody two-shoes and the achiever, and mummy and daddy say we're doing well, and we want all the things that you want, you know, that people strive for. When she died, you actually realise you're on your own and you have to do what's best for you and the people you love. You cannot spend your life worrying about what other people say and what other people think. You have to live for yourself. Whereas, so it's a bit like, I don't give a I don't give a like, I'm not gonna keep trying to keep everybody else happy and spinning all these plates. I'm gonna do what I think is the best. And that is a superpower, because when you've been a people pleaser all your life and you've been desperate, what must people think of me? Now I just think, well, do you know what? If they don't understand, they don't understand. You've not walked in my shoes, you don't understand.
No.
So
You're the way you've articulated that, I mean, through the most, tragic trauma, grief, there's a strength there that I can feel coming off you, and when I'm with you and Dean together, it's a resilience together, and you've got that bond that it lives in Cici's name, right?
Yeah.
But it sort of connects you to send you forward,
yeah.
And you're not going to tolerate anything from anyone, and
No.
you're pursuing your passion, your dreams. But I could talk to you for so much longer, but we ran out of time. But thank you for being so honest and sharing so much with me now, which I think can only help other people in context of the way that people can cope with anything that could be anything close to what you've gone through. So thank you, Dannielle.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for talking to me.
Oh, pleasure.